Okay, welcome everybody. We're live streaming on LinkedIn for this Meet the Author. And we've got an interesting individual who's just come out with a new book joining us today, don't we, Gary?
Yes, thanks, Mara, and welcome everybody to our show. I'm really pleased to have Sergio Valencia Krauss with us today. Sergio is coming to us from Mexico, and his book, as you can see behind me and actually on his screen, is Become an Occupational Health and Safety Excellence Manager, 10 high-impact solutions for the development of sustainable companies. So I think will be a fun session today. In some respects, we will get a bit of a Latin America flavor of how they see safety. So anybody that's online, if you have questions like, so what's different between there and the rest of the world or whatever you're coming from, I think it's a good opportunity to ask Sergio if you've got those sort of questions. So welcome, Sergio.
Thank you, Gary, Tamara, and everyone.
Okay.
My pleasure.
So let me start off by asking always that first question. What made you decide to write this book? And is there a certain need that you're trying to fulfill?
Well, I think there is one thing when I see success in the things that we do, it definitely is passion. So I am passionate of the things that we do. Who doesn't, right? So in my passion in EH&S took me to deliver a message for people who wants to do their best. In addition, I would like to comment that my father, before he died, told me about the poet Jose Marti, who said there are three things that every person should do during a lifetime: to plant a tree, to have a child, and write a book. And these words sounded like thunder in my mind, so I decided to go through with it.
Cool. Well, you know, when I first came across your book and read your title, I figured, oh, there's a lot of books out there already about safety excellence. So tell me, what differentiates your book from the others?
Well, I could tell three things. The first one is the book is like a bonsai seed. It could be planted in the ground, but it could be different for many reasons. In many organizations, we have different things. We have different complexity, different culture, but I feel that all organizations need a framework to build a health and safety culture. Another one is that usually OSH management books have a perspective from the OSH managers to the organization. But in this case, thanks to the collaboration in the book, we could see how is the perspective, how the perspective from the organization to the OSH management is. And the third one is the simple language is used. It's an easy reading. It's much better to ask to the readers to take action in the organization and the situation that they are. Definitely, the book is not intended to be a magic recipe. It's not for recipe followers, but chefs who has different ingredients in the organizations. When I mean with the ingredients, resources, complexity, leadership, different ingredients that they have. Each professional in OSH could take the things that could be feasible to do in their organizations.
Cool. All right. So when Sergio and I were talking, I had to smile because we talked a bit about chefs and not recipe followers. And if you recall, last month was Karen Hewitt, and Power People, she had baking in that. So that theme seems to be carrying through again. Yeah, I think we all want to be chefs because there are times when we don't have all the right ingredients to bake that cake. So we need to understand the principles behind that so we can substitute and do it properly. Well, who do you see as the audience for your book?
Well, this book is written for OSH professionals and leaders in the organization who needs to start from a framework to join a journey from today to the OSH excellence. I mean, in terms of OSH to have to respond. Normally, we heard about a couple of questions: what we need to do, or where we do start for. So companies around the world are different, right? Nevertheless, we could consider that the book is more accurate for large scale companies with traditional hierarchical organization, and also small and medium sized companies who has the staff for HR or OSH staff.
Yeah, right. I'm just hearing some background noise, so could I ask you to go on mute unless you're talking? That would help. Okay, thanks everybody. Right. Yeah, there is that situation where, for example, you've got startups. For example, somebody wants to open up a new restaurant, and of course they're starting with very little staff, don't even think about HR or such, or even support staff. Do you find this book would help those people that are just new chefs that want to start up a new restaurant?
Yes, because as you mentioned, we have a menu in the restaurant with different choices. So we can choose to adopt this content from the book for the organizations where it's feasible to do. As mentioned, large scale companies, medium or small, with a minimum staff of HR or OSH professionals.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you're making about having that framework. So now this book isn't written by you. Actually, it's written by a collaboration of outstanding professionals in Latin America in their field of action. I found this quite interesting because I assumed all that the authors were in the OSH field, but apparently not. You just got a bunch of really good people in Latin America, and you got them to write different chapters in the book. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It was an interesting experience for me because it's a collaboration. First of all, the collaboration of Malcolm Stapes, he's the Vice President of Health and Safety from L'Oreal, as well as 7 collaborators in the 10 chapters. We are some people in 1 chapter or 2 chapters, and talking about these 7 collaborators, we have just 1 related in OSH, the other one's not. I mean, for example, we have a coach with 30 years of experience coaching general managers, communication, KPIs and master plan developers. We have talent developers, sustainability experts, and this is a interesting mixing for make the perspective from the organization to the OSH management that they have.
Right. So let me ask you a bit of an.
I forgot to mention that my close network belongs from Latin America. I'm from Latin America, but in the case of, for example, the 2 collaborations, Amicam and Maria Lu, they live actually they are living in US, and also Amica lived in Israel for many years.
Oh, okay, right. Because there is a bit of a Latin America flavor to this, what do you find similar in thinking down in Latin America compared to the rest of the world?
In previous years, I think it was very, very different, but it's not, because normally we're in Latin America, but it happened around the world. We're thinking in the day by day, but not in the medium and long term, for example. And we have some methods as For example, you can hear, it's not OSH is not my responsibility, or OSH is not my business, or Eastern European, American, or Peruvian, or Brazilian people are like this or like that. It's not much different. The social culture is different, right? But not the corporate culture. It normally happens that we are cutting by the same scissor. I mean, we have same issues despite we are different.
Yeah, interesting. So anybody online, has anybody worked in Latin America, Mexico, Peru, Argentina? Can you share maybe an experience that you've got, and either you support what Sergio is saying or you found something different? Has anybody worked down there at all? I haven't, for example. Has anybody online?
I haven't worked down there, but I've had oversight of plants and that had reportings up into me. And I'll tell you that Sergio's exactly right. The only difference that I see, though, is that I think that employee involvement in Latin America is sometimes easier to have happen because they seem to get a little bit more enthusiastic, more excited about it when the employee involvement comes around. And that's why I think you can get a lot of their good cultural programs and improvements done, because they're really more eager to grasp it than you would say some that I've seen even in the States or in Europe per se. That's my experience.
Yeah, there's one author I read.
And that's
book. Oh, go ahead, Sergio. You go ahead first.
Yeah, exactly as mentioned by Ken. That's why the gap between the need and the resources is bigger in Latin America. So we need an extra effort to reach the target. So is the desire to improve the things, the pride for the culture that they belong is part of the things that that happened in Latin America in this case, as mentioned by Kate.
Right. Okay. So a question to Sergio, and maybe to you, Ken, since you've got some experience. Did you find any big differences that we should be aware of? And the one that came to my mind is looking at indigenous rituals. For example, the ability to go and talk to the local people and find out, oh, they do things a little bit differently than we do. Did you find any of those at all?
I would like to mention that many industries are developed in the main cities in the countries, but there are some operations as oil and gas business, drills, mining, when we have these customs, and the main thing that we need to do is understand how the culture is, the custom that they have, and also is part of the trends today related to the inclusion, the biodiversity that we have is part of the elements that we need to consider in OSH management, on every management in general, I mean.
Okay, right. So after talking and with these different professionals, these authors, did you find some stuff that was surprising that you didn't realize that you learned from them?
So surprising in terms of what? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, is there something that one of the authors said that caught you by surprise?
In terms of culture, you mentioned.
Anything they wrote about. There's a few things I discovered. For example, one of them wrote about the requirement to have academic training as an electrician. That's not mandatory, but it was optional according to legal and corporate requirements. So I found this quite surprising.
Okay. Well, despite that, we had a colonization in the 15th century from Europe. the most influent regulation for Latin America is OSHA from US. So, but we didn't copy all OSHA regulation, unfortunately. For example, there are many holes in the local regulations between the countries. One example, as you mentioned, it is the electrician. We have a local regulation as a framework who ask the competence of each job position, but it's not very specific. It's up to the organizations. I mean, it's very different because it's unbelievable that it's not mandatory. You have a minimal academic training for electricians or welders, because it's not a specific requirement for, from the Latin American countries. It is exception, with the exception of Mexico, which is more specific, but not exactly as OSHA regulation, for example. So that's the reason why the competence from for some job position is not completed and doesn't fulfill the minimum requirements that the industry requires.
Yeah. And what Sergio was speaking from is the chapter specifically on competence and competency. So that's why I find this book fascinating, because it just takes you into different components of the framework to have a look at that. What it spoke to me about was how the master apprentice craft model is used a lot. And somehow we seem to have gotten away from that. And we've said, well, all we have to do is just put processes in place, train people on processes, and poof, that's all they kind of need. And then as people, and we can even outsource that, and we can just bring in new people. And if they just follow the process, we should be fine. And we seem to have lost something about where all those little tricks, those little what we call heuristics that the master had, there's no apprentice to pass them down. So I was really pleased to see that that particular craft model is still being applied in there. Anybody got some comments about that, about competency at all? And Tanya, you got any thoughts about that? Are we going down the right path in North America, or should we be learning from our Latin American friends?
I know that Tamara has her hand up. I can weigh in, but
sorry, Tamara.
Go ahead, Tanya, and then I'll weigh in.
Okay, thanks.
Well, from what you just brought up, Gary, I think you're right. I mean, when we look at a lot of our history, we have not realized the value of a lot of indigenous cultures and the way that they had done things. And I think we're now at this turning point to realize that this colonization trip that we had been on for centuries might not have been as enlightened as we think. Mm-hmm. And that there's a lot that we could learn from, what Sergio is talking about, from some of the cultures that, however they did it, were able to maintain a lot of their thought processes and traditions throughout this, otherwise very Western Enlightenment kind of thinking. But I wanted to ask specifically about, well, I guess Osh and lithium, because you do have so as far as I understand, a world's rich repository of lithium in various South American countries that is now, the new gold kind of thing. And I think colonization could happen again in order to just get the resources so that we can build our electric cars and whatever we need the lithium for. I'm just wondering how South America is both safety-wise and maybe, on some of these other more territorial protection type of things, how South America is responding to this drive to get the lithium out of there.
So it's not much different. if I understand you, your question is related to some specific regulations in South America.
I guess there's a natural resource that you have in South America that the world wants.
Yeah.
And because of that, the power dynamics are going to be very interesting, I think. And I'm just wondering if you have any insight on this, because if we continue the way that we have, then Europe and North America will just bully you, and we'll take the resources, and we'll make the electric cars, and you're going to be disenfranchised, and we're not going to get to a better place globally.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
Exploitation.
ahead.
Yeah.
Almost all the countries are included in the United Nations, right? So we have the Agenda 2030 related to the SDGs. And if we have a buyer, for example, from North America, needs the resources from South America, need to have conditions between the treatments that they have. In that, one of the agreements is the regulation that we need to fulfill. It happened in Mexico, for example, in terms of OSH. In terms of environment, also, it considered in Latin America in general, thanks to these commercial agreements between the countries. So why this is important? It's important to keep sustainability of the resources and also the business that they have. If not, the resources will end.
Okay. Well, we're almost halfway through, so I want to come back to the book itself. Can you just give us a very quick overview of the 10 solutions that you pulled together? Interacting with, and because the 7 authors, you interacted with almost 100 OSS professionals around the world as well. So can you just give us those 10 solutions quickly?
Yes, when we are talking about 10 solutions, we could think about high-tech innovation, which is important. But there's a phrase from Athenian philosopher Plato, which say the greater things of destruction is to remind the things that we already know. So in any moment, we heard about these solutions I will mention, but our retention in our mind is very low. So what we could mention about these 10 solutions is divided into 10 chapters. It's starting with the leadership and commitment, the reason for believing in OSH, the strategy for the excellence, a baseline as a starting point, competencies, communication, cost benefit for the decisions, the goals for reaching excellence, the culture, and last but not the least, the sustainability. If you ask me, is the most important chapter? What is the most important chapter? My response is the 10 ones, because they are related each other. There's a relationship between them, and is the framework that we need to pay attention to, at least for preventing accidents and avoiding penalties. This is the first step, first basis, is the minimum that we need to do. But the next step is how we could get this journey for the excellence, and the continuous improvement is part of this, and this is the 10 elements, if you could call like this, that could build the path for this excellence, as I mentioned.
Okay, thanks. Tomorrow, with your hands back down, can you put it back up? Did you have something you wanted to say? Sorry
No, we've moved through that point.
Okay.
I guess one question that I have, because I have worked down in around Mexico and Honduras, etc. More as a lay person, helping those in the who reside there with their goals and stuff. But one thing that I did notice is that they don't have the same life opportunity and chances as we do up here in North America to access education, to access resources such as a quality professionals that can bring in resources for them to be able to do their job safely. You know, it's great if they're working at a large company that might bring in those resources with them. But in a lot of instances, you know, they were just making do with what they had. So how can we start like collaborating to move that needle?
For example, multinational companies have this advantage to have first, the benchmarking is important. The second thing is to bring people who needs the know-how and takes to the other places around the world where we can get this know-how. And in Latin America, there are few people with a specialization in some topics. For example, process safety, for example, investigation methodology, and so on. There are many topics, hygiene, specifically and other topics.
Yeah.
So there are more people with this know-how in North America or Europe. Sometimes we bring these professionals to bring the training in Latin America. But now with the pandemic, we can accelerate this process in terms of virtual training. It's more feasible to get this training and get the know-how. But remember that virtual is for classroom training, but not for a training which needs practice.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should have said quantity of professionals. Okay. Kind of stumbled with my dyslexia there, which word I was supposed to choose. But exactly that. Like, we're very fortunate here in Canada and the United States that, you know, in many companies that we do have the privilege of working at, they have, like I always had when I was at Metro or whatever, a VP of health and safety, like other people in that that corporate lineage that could help kind of nurture along what I needed to be doing. But in a lot of other places, they don't have that. They don't have a quality professional or somebody who knows about fall safety, etc. Like, they don't have access to that type of thing. And I see there's a lot of criticism on LinkedIn when people see other individuals not doing things the way they might be doing them at home. And so I think there's also like, there's a wealth of knowledge, a wealth of people who have the knowledge. And then when I was working in those locations, they were hungry for information. They wanted to learn, right? So you have people who are like, wow, this is something. I remember in Rotan when we were putting up a ladder and a health and safety manager came out of his house because we were putting up a satellite. I might have mentioned that to this group already. And he started talking about ladder safety. Now, I wasn't in health and safety at the time, so I didn't even know the whole world of health and safety existed, right? But those two men, when they got that guy and he was talking to them about ladder safety, they were like asking him questions, all like hundreds of questions. And they even go back to him and ask him more questions, right? And then they brought that into their business of putting up the satellites when they had other people join them. Oh, well, we have to train you on how to properly like put up the ladder, stabilize it, and what you need to do. And it was just like they were really serious about it. So that's why I'm asking that. Like, what could we be doing in our area of health and safety to be helping those who are less fortunate, in your opinion?
From my perspective, the main thing that we need to do is to develop the baseline in order to know what are the main gaps.
Okay.
And this could start on accurate risk assessment in order to know what are the things that we need to do. But you mentioned a very important issue is the access to a better education, better opportunities. In this case, in training, for example, there are many. One thing is to find the right professional. It's much easier in the first world countries than countries in ways of development. The other thing is the price, the resources. I mean, is for us could be expensive, and this it could be frustrated for many companies who want the best knowledge, the best know-how for other ones. There's and it happens in the majority of the cases. The one main issue that we have, not just in Latin America, also it happens in Asia and Africa, is the labor formality. If we have informal ways to work, and one of the SDGs from UN is the work with dignity and economic growth. So this is one of the things that we need to be focused to reduce this gap. I think Susan is with hands up.
Suzanne.
Yeah. Hi, you can hear me okay?
Yeah,
Yes.
All
you're
right.
back.
Well,
You're back.
yeah. So Sergio, I apologize. I think you have better internet connection than rural Canada. So there you go. So I apologize if this has already been raised, you know, but having been in the health and safety industry in Canada for 25 years, it was really our statutes. You know, we have Occupational Health and Safety Acts, which have enabled regulations, and we have lots and lots and lots of regulations. And over the decades, what that has done is that has built up how we do health and safety in Canada. What do you have for health and safety regulations, if any, and how has that maybe helped or not helped how you do things there?
Sorry, could you repeat the last part, Susan?
Well, how you do health and safety in Mexico and Latin America, what are there for occupational health and safety regulations? And if there are none, how has that helped or not helped your profession?
Well, in terms of the OSH professional, it's not, unfortunately, it's not regulated. We need to build, it's up to each organization, as I mentioned at the beginning, how the competence of OSH professionals should be. But you mentioned at the beginning one important thing is the gap. There are many countries who have many regulations. That is right, but we could see that there is a big hole between the regulation requirements and the reality. That's the reason why it's not easy to fulfill all the regulations around the world. We should to fulfill, yeah, it's mandatory, but but always it's not possible because it's up of the resources. It's up to the accurate plan that we develop, and if we have a good competency level, we need to have the bench. In the case of Latin America, we need to have the benchmark between other companies around the world, which are doing the things better than us. And this is one of the. This is my opinion in that term.
So there are no occupational health and safety regulations?
No, no, yes, yes, definitely. All the countries we have regulations. I mean at the beginning that there are some important gaps. For example, for Latin America, the reference is OSHA regulation from US, right? So
Oh,
yes, but OSHA regulation, for example, cover what exactly we need for electrician or welders. But there's many regulations in Latin America that we don't have that specification. We need to develop the training to take care of the people. There are general frameworks of local regulation. There are specific ones. I like the Mexican regulation, for example, because Mexico has a specific regulation, for example, for confining the spaces, work at heights, for ergonomics, and so on. For example, in Peru, we have a regulation for depend of the core business. For example, we have regulation for industry, for fishery, for mining, for oil and gas, and so on. But what I mean is not exactly the same as the reference. We have some gaps, maybe, but for politician or resources reasons, I don't know. But for any reason, we don't have some specific and important topics that could save a life.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder, Suzanne, if we have the same issues in Canada, for example, like in British Columbia, we have WorkSafe BC, their set of rules. Then over Ontario or Nova Scotia, they've got the same, the words are different though, because when talking to Sergio, I found that, oh, what they say in the Peru regulations is different than what they say in Mexico. So how do people interpret those things? And this is why I found chapter 2 in the book, Sergio, so powerful, because it talks a bit about the difference between conviction and obligation. And I just wonder, and this speaks more than just Latin America, how many OHS professionals just go through the motions because, or even C-suite, we're obligated to do this, as opposed to really have the strong conviction to that. That story that was told by the author of that chapter 2 about the operations manager who wouldn't complete his monthly OSH internal report, really powerful, because that person said, well, I used to be an OHS person, I'm in operations now. So I don't really care about OHS or OSH. And Sergio, why don't you share with them how OSH professionals, how are they perceived?
Well, it won't sound popular, but as OSH managers, we need to change not blaming others that is happening around. First of all, we need to see ourselves what we need to improve to take action. We normally heard tags for OSH professionals like paper workaholics, or they manage OSH just from the office, resources spenders, and so on. But what in this chapter 2, I mentioned it about obligation versus conviction. Not just from OSH. In everything that we do is not the same, but we can do by conviction instead of obligation. When we are obligated, okay, well, we need to do because it's mandatory for the law. But are you convinced that it makes sense for you is the question? And if it makes sense and it could improve for you, it's much better. I have a couple of examples like this. One is when I mentioned when a general manager asked about a good engineering control for the process and asked for the OSH professional, is it mandatory regarding local regulation? Very specific, we need this engineering control? And the answer is no. Okay, so we need to find out another solution. is because the general manager asked about the local regulation. But if the same general manager is convinced that we need to have this engineering control in order to improve the risk level control, so it could work well for the company, and is a added value for the process.
The other chapter I really liked was the one written in strategy, because this one I found to be really current. It talks a bit about now facing what we call the good old VUCA world, right? Which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
It's very known, this part is very known, the watermelon effect, you know, green outside, but red inside. For example, another example is to reach the target of number of safety observations per employee monthly. But it's possible that we could fulfill, okay, the target is one safety observation per employee monthly. Okay, we can fulfill, but we are convinced that why we are doing just for the target, or we are convinced that this safety observation could help to avoid an accident. This is a different perspective.
Yeah, okay. Anybody got some thoughts, questions so far? Okay.
Malcolm.
Yeah, it's you bring up some excellent points. You know, when working internationally, you got to meet with the managers and crew to kind of break the ice and get an understanding of things, and then set the expectations of the project, and develop worker involvement. What you mentioned, observations and stuff like that. Those are really important to operations. But the key thing is setting expectations, setting the boundaries, setting your reportables, and empowering the employees and managers, to get out there and do it. And I think your book captures that. And it sounds like a very solid handbook, for a new manager or somebody wanting to explore more international business trade, other than what we do here in the Western side. The Western model is kind of aristocratic, and everybody thinks that we're right. But my experience traveling internationally is the communities out there are safety conscious, and they're strong in their trades. Some of the trade workers may have developed habits that we consider dangerous, but have been very productive for over hundreds of years. And we benefit each other by sharing our expectations of safety and developing on that general friendship and cooperating. And I think that's the way to go at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Agree.
So let's bring this right to today and use COVID-19 as an example.
Oh, yeah.
Why not? Okay, so here we got, and let's see how we would apply the 10 solution framework to that. So this is, again, a real world practical application. Let's assume that you have a workplace and it was shut down. Now you may partially reopen it with remote, on-site, hybrid workers. There's a good piece in the book about OH&S professional being a change agent. So what would you do as that professional, as a change agent in this world of VUCA?
Well, as the pandemic impacts definitely in OSH management, because there is one word that I heard a lot, and I try to find out the real meaning and application of this is the resilience. The resilience that we need to have in order to stay in a VUCA environment. volatile, complex. And we, I mentioned it in the book because when I thought about to write the book, was the end of 2020, when we don't have vaccines, right? We are in 2022 now, and we are talking about a new normality, but because it's COVID-19 is not the first pandemic, but it won't be definitely the last one. So we need to think how we should be prepared, and it's up to each again, each country, each state, or county where we are placed. And we need to think what are the main lessons learned that we have from this pandemic. Because if we are thinking that we will get back to the previous normality, so we're not learning anything. In this chapter, you mentioned it, in which chapter we are talking about COVID-19. It's not specific to COVID-19, but the resilience, and also to pay attention about this lesson learned could be mentioned in the chapter number 3, for example, in the strategy, the chapter number 5 in competencies, because it's again, we're not working similar as previous before the pandemic. We work we are talking more about remote work, hybrid work. I mentioned it also a little bit in the chapter number 10, so sustainability. That makes sense.
Yeah. I think it's really reinforces what Malcolm is saying about if we think we know it all, we're going to be in deep trouble.
Can I add a couple of things? I agree with what Sergio is saying, and particularly when he talks about the resilience. To me, what really changed during the pandemic is that most global programs had some type of pandemic response plan or some sort of business continuity plan. But I think in most people's mindset, the likelihood of ever having to enact that was fleeting. It was away, although that's not going to happen. So I'm not going to give it a lot of attention that it needs to. I think what's really going to change after the pandemic, I think things will get back to some normalcy, but knowing what we've gone through, the preparedness will change. The fact that we have seen a global pandemic and that we've had to live through it and work through it, and we understand now some of the nuances of when people do come back to work and how do we keep them focused. Because to me, that was the biggest thing, was people were scared. There was a lot of things that were competing for their attention at work. Accidents were on the rise because they weren't focusing as much as they needed to be, those that were working on site. So to me, I agree with Sergio and his premise there about resilience, is that we have to make sure that we're ready for the next time when these things come around. We're better prepared, and we're not playing kind of catch up like we did with this one.
Really good point, Kent. And if anybody, it's Suzanne and I, understand the need for preparation, because in British Columbia, God, we went through heat waves. Oh, then we had an atmospheric river which flooded the place, and then you threw on the wildfires. So your point about that, Kent, being prepared is right. But it's not about saying, oh, we've developed this emergency preparation plan, we're done.
Right.
It's about the resilient process you got to have in place, because there's a good possibility that plan that you created won't work, because this is novel, it's different.
Yep.
So you better have a process in place to figure out some new and better solutions.
And so this pandemic showed us that we need to think more in the mental health of people, the well-being. This very there was so far in the past, but that's one of the things that we should pay attention. We need to attend, because it impacts not just in us, in all the organization. Tanya has the hands up.
Yeah.
Yeah, just on the pandemic, like I remember hearing that, well, a couple of things. Number one, I was so fortunate the very, very first week of the pandemic, the TED organization was running talks, and I heard the head of Gavi talk about we need vaccine equity. When we get vaccines, we need vaccine equity worldwide, or else we'll never get ourselves out of this. And look at where we are. So, you know, it just kind of test running this whole global, you know, we need to act together as humanity. You know, this COVID thing kind of showed us how we're not quite there yet. We don't seem to be able to realize this. For example, just on the COVID thing, one more snippet was a lot of these, you know, isolated home, make sure that you can, you know, shop, you know, for just shop for 2 weeks kind of thing, and then stay home and don't interact with others. I heard that there are places in Peru who don't even have refrigeration. So when these rules are being come up in Geneva, you know, they're thinking about a context that they are living, not necessarily that other people are living, and that has impacts. And you know, people in where they were talking about in Peru, just they go shopping to the market every day because they don't have refrigeration. And it's like, okay, so this is a different reality than what a whole lot of people who came up with the COVID rules knew. So just one last thing, and this is I'm teetering on being almost uncomfortable asking this, but I mean, the Western societies have gone through evolutions of things, and there is the possibility, like I know that there are states, there are countries in Africa that are leapfrogging over a lot of the lessons that we have learned via energy and things like this. They don't actually have to go through all of the mistakes that were made, and they can just take current day stuff and implement it, as opposed to, you know, the whole learning journey. The whole safety community is undergoing this huge transformation from this whole Tayloristic Heinrich mindset to this more responsive, you know, understanding the frontline worker, changing leadership models kind of thing. And I'm just wondering if South America is doing the same kind of leapfrogging. They don't have to go through the same evolution of the Taylorism and all this stuff in order to get to a better safety regime today.
Good question, Tanya. It's very slow, very slow to copy these models, because I not forget that you mentioned previously, is we try to copy and paste the things that other countries are going forward, but unfortunately we're too bad for copy and paste, because we copy just part of the things, but not it's not casual, because it depends of the resources, the environment that we have. You mentioned an important thing, is the refrigeration, the ventilation that we have in the places. I would like to mention another topic here, because it depends also of the formality that we have. In Latin America, the formality is 50%. In Peru, for example, is more than 70% of informality. So it's another reality, another challenges that they need to face, despite of the resources and the environment that we have. For example, what advantage you are talking about Peru, for example? One advantage in Peru, we have one of the index of major index vaccination per person. And we have millions of, I think 90% of vaccines. The population is 33 million. So 90 millions, it's good. But there's another issue, is the access, the keep in the good condition, the vaccines and so on. But in terms of the trends that we have, the change, the leadership model, the new trends in OSH management, always they are coming for Latin America, but very slow because of the, again, because of the resources, because of the environment, because of the culture, also, because also for politician reasons, unfortunately.
Yeah, right. All right, so I said we got some LinkedIn comments here. Can you maybe pick out a couple and share those with
Yeah.
us?
Yeah, we were on LinkedIn Live and we had quite a number of people joining us, actually. It got up there to 12 at one point. So we had a few comments that I just wanted to share before we close out. So we have Paulo, who was saying the important thing is pay attention with the law of the country, specifically QHS. So thank you for that question. Comment. Thank you for that comment, Paulo. We have Dr. Zibra, who wanted to ask, maybe in a later date, we could be doing this, going back to Suzanne's question, to really drill down into what are the existing or not existing occupational health and safety regulations in Latino America countries and Africa as well. So people are interested in moving that conversation along. So thank you, Suzanne, for bringing that up. We have, should COVID be considered a social disease or should it be considered independently in the workplace? So people are thinking along that line. And yeah, so those are our comments on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Laura. Well, as you said, we are at the top of hour and want to respect people's time. I know that if you go and you click on Amazon.com, if you can read Spanish, you're doing fine. Because when is the English version going to be available, Sergio?
Well, the English version will be released in Amazon on March 23rd this year. Kindle and printed version. The releasing in Spanish was in October 27th. Was and reached in 47 categories in Amazon bestseller in 5 marketplaces. It's I think very demanded in the market, but it will be available since March 23rd. I will show in LinkedIn some videos promoting the book in the next days.
Excellent, great, appreciate that. So as my custom, I always like to ask the author, what would be your final 3 takeaways that you would like to leave with us?
First of all, this is not a book for receipt followers, but chefs, believers in OSH as a vehicle of reaching excellence. The second one is change starts with ourselves as OSH professionals. We won't see changes that we want to see if we doesn't want to be change agents. And the third thing, the last but not the least, I think this book is a legacy I would like to share with all of you. I'm sure it could contribute at least with a grain of sand with your success in the organizations that you have and take your organizations to the excellence.
Great, thank you. Well, that does it for another show. Tamara, over to you.
Sorry, Gary?
Tamara, are you there? Oh, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I had a technical moment. My Zoom went away, so I had to find it and come back. Anyway, yeah, thank you everybody for joining us today. It's a great conversation. I'd really like to open this up and kind of dig deeper into health and safety and how it's done in other places in the world, I think that would be really interesting topic to get more into. So thank you, Sergio, on behalf of Safeopedia for coming and joining us today. Thank you. Gary?
Okay, thanks all. And next month, we're going to have Clive Lloyd coming back. Clive actually was on the very first Meet the Author show. So I talked to Clyde and figured what we need to do is come back and see what have you learned since you wrote the book. So hopefully that'll be an exciting, interesting time, and hope everybody here and on LinkedIn are going to be able to join us for that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Sergio.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
See you soon. Bye.
And for more great content, go to safeopedia.com. Thank you.